Christina Universe Citizen presents New Era Religion, Episode 34, Part 2, April 21, 2022. Metaphysical is the accurate terminology. Continuing from Part 1 with overlapping paragraphs. One of the earliest impressions I got from Bucky Fuller, who stated power goes with the line of supply. And another quotation, integration discretely controls the coordination of complex interactions. Then, with so much emphasis on the monetary supply being converted to Bitcoin and other digital currency, I have to wonder, what competitive criminalities to imaginable extremes are bound to occur, as the form of government ought to integrate generalized laws, technically to be light years ahead of such disquieting possibilities. Who wants to incessantly focus on stockpiling digital wallets full of transaction devices as the predominant exploitation value, where there seems to be no consciousness evolution that has already recognized, in quotes, frequency begins with 3 with a triangle, which is the minimum cyclic enclosed circuitry, end quote, as well as that, end quote, consciousness is the generalization, end quote, and, in quotes, model is the generalization, end quote, whereas, in quotes, form is always special case, time, size, frequency. Obviously, Michael Saylor's preference for specialists signals a path of questionable intention compared to Fuller's generalists. When Bucky asked some large question, he was consciously mindful of the generalist, where you learn to look toward big patterns. As he asked himself the question, in quotes, does man have a function in the universe, end quote, he was opposed to specialists when he writes in World Game Workshop 1977, in quotes, the specialists were all generalists anyway until they got to graduate level, end quote. He said, in quotes, the specialists seek the special cases with ever less chance of finding a new generalization, end quote. This seems to be the aberrated course Michael Saylor may be on as a promoter of specialists, who may not see the application of their knowledge that leaves out universe and inadvertently encourages others to do likewise. Furthermore, we can wonder what compels these highly accredited university graduates to work overtime using any word in the English language that avoids metaphysical? I ask, recalling Saylor's use of the word dematerialize, as in dematerialize information, and Lex Friedman's obvious enjoyment derived from this term. Of course, I looked in the dictionary. According to Oxford University Press Dictionary and Thesaurus, dematerialize is a verb. It means to become no longer physically present, as to become spiritual rather than physical. Bingo! No wonder. The most relevant conceptuality that is other than physical, correlating to energy and synergy and whatever more clearly explains the phenomenon, has been avoided like a plague. Is it because metaphysical redirects intellect along more comprehensively sustaining, synergetically informing universe, that the self-educated layperson, as well as a general education with some college credits, curiosity intuits something is so amiss, yet grasping what it turns out being, is what we can explore in Synergetics 326.40. Is it, for some inane reason, that universities cannot permit the accurately defined term metaphysical into their differently valued education curriculums? This goes for all the factors of the PRJWBCS: politics, religion, justice, war, belief complex schemes, and the evolution essentiality of differentiating schemes from systems. Bucky Fuller lays it out contiguously with his lifelong search and discovery of nature's coordinate system. Metaphysical is not spiritual. Metaphysical is more comprehensively informing than the inaccurate term dematerialized. Metaphysical discoveries ever more inclusively and comprehensively clarify the more economical communication in its progressive description of the eternally changeless, and the rate of what is more economical restatability that continually accelerates. Simply put, humans are metaphysical. Yet the R factor of the PRJWBCS may have set the stage aeons ago, as humans may have intuited something that was not physical has something to do with what is not visible, but relates to transformations and all that they could not sense with their five senses. Spirit may have seemed an imaginable description of what cannot also be physical. They would also have been protecting what they did not yet know, and themselves from being rebuked as a non-believer of the church's redundancies, not having a toolbox of appropriate words, the generalized terms we can use today in the 21st century. Logically, by selecting the least harmful, they held at bay the chastisement and fury of the all-authoritative power of the R-Factor's claims as the God-ordained experts on matters of life and death, realities, as it were. In that self-denial the earlier humans is true for humans today, abnegated consciousness evolution's intuition that is tuned into the cosmic streams, subconscious to conscious transceiver brain traffic that redirects metaphysical intellect as a function of cosmically coordinated thought language as the viable omnirational system conceptualities of the eternal omniscient mind's integral universe. In Synergetics 723.04, Fuller's perspective analysis reveals two classes of redundant acts. 1, conscious and knowledgeably competent. 2, subconscious and ignorantly fearful cautionaries. Structural redundance is modelable, apparently, so we ought to include these conceptualities wherever competent design is of relevant importance, as anticipating a true democracy seems more clearly to be than whatever else it may be in the universal communications process. Similarly to our existing generations, earlier people may have taken their imaginations into the occult, and all they could conjure against the establishment, those domineering authorities who ruled without mercy, to every punishing degree from the pulpit, the judge's bench, the seats of power. It drove the slave mentality to extremes of cruelty and from which the human mind must eventually escape. That may have been when the spirit world became an obsessive power play, correlating to conjuring spells and practicing witchcraft, as an offensiveness against those domineering people. Self and other could not actually put a finger on the invisible, as we cannot put our finger through a glass window. Yet billions of waves pass through glass and other physical objects because there is a difference between the physical and the metaphysical. It is a conceptual difference that will never be clarified by using misnomers like spirit, spirituality, and dematerialized. Humans are motivated by evolution and feel compelled to destruct the power that misguides the evolution process. Of course, all inadequately employed terminology can be categorized to some degree with insanity. It is quite insane, as thought and language can be used against humans of a mind, our intelligent evolution species. We are not a race of people. So sailors' use of the words human race is especially appalling because it hinges on misdirections leading to CRT, critical race theory, that is taught to eagerly attentive students in the classrooms of America and other nations. Forensic anthropologists have more accurately defined our species as humans of a mind. I take it further into clarifying what mind that could most accurately and more intelligently be, which is humans of the eternal omniscient mind, an evolution species. That said, does not induce radically problematic divisive nomenclature as the word race, an invented term by the PRJWBCS, without clarifying the mindsets operating behind the ignorance to further promote the slave mentality conditioning. The slave mentality separates a mind from its inherent intelligence. It keeps dividing people into races and classes. It seems never to acknowledge metaphysical, as clearly as Bucky Fuller did, when he was so insightful as his geodesic models were conceptually constructed, and as his vectorial geometry, his consciously astute observations induced further insights and consciousness evolution. Since metaphysical is unweighable, imponderable, and cannot move an electromagnetically levered needle or mass-attracted needle, the term spiritual becomes absurd. Primarily because it implies a ghost, a vaporous enigma, as the Holy Ghost. It is much easier and more accurately self-assuring to recognize that conceptioning is metaphysical, and so the generalized content of disseminated information that induces metaphysical generalized conceptioning fields of thought is more self-other validating than all the non-relevant terminologies that perpetuate educated ignorance pertaining to the conceptualization of energy that cannot be from the spiritual, but can be accurately informing our humanity of the metaphysical as it is differentiated from the physical. In quotes, equilibrium is metaphysical. End quote. This means we can recognize the difference since equilibrium is metaphysical, whereas disequilibrium is physical. Most important, symmetry, alas, is metaphysical, as asymmetry is physical. We have experiential proof that physical systems like those rockets and high-speed trajectories accelerate. But we do not see the entropically unraveling as energy transforming at microcosmic rates of change and the numbers. To be continued in Part 3, Episode 35. Thank you.